What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm bringing you 5 players whose ADP for 2024 really confuses me. Now, I don't want this list to be one direction or the other. I don't want this to be overvalued players, undervalued players. That's not exactly what this list is. These are just 5 players who, when I looked at their current ADP, I went to myself and I said, I don't get it, man. I just don't get it. Obviously, if it's a few spots off from where I'm kind of at, then they're not that confusing. But these are players whose ADPs I really take a step back and I go, okay, that's what the market thinks. It's really different from what I think. So, without further ado, I don't want to spend too much time really, talking. Let's just get right into it. The first guy I really want to talk about, and I think it seems like this guy is rising on everyone's boards, and I just don't understand it. It's Tank Dell, right? Going as the wide receiver 30, 58th player overall. I understand 100% that Tank Dell was on a heater last year. I mean, this guy was undrafted. He was this really small player. I mean, he still is like a very small, tiny player. No one expected really much from him. And he broke out and had some monster games and was really productive for fantasy football. Last year, if you take his stats over the games he played and you average them out over 17 games, he was on pace for 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. I mean, obviously, that is a top, 12 to 15 fantasy wide receiver. But some things we're not considering, right? His size is a concern. Can a guy at his size really maintain a workload of being a true, high-end wide receiver option? I don't know. He literally was in a shooting this offseason, so he got shot. Like he literally has a bullet in him. Now, you can say, oh man, he'll recover, and he broke his leg last year. That's fluky. Sure. But they also brought in an all-pro receiver in Stephon Diggs. They just re-signed Nico Collins. I worry there won't be enough targets week in and week out for Tank Dell to be very useful for fantasy football. 100%. Could he be a guy that is, have his big weeks? Absolutely. Will he catch a couple bomb touchdowns this year and be, a top 10 receiver that week because he went for 130 and a touchdown? Of course, because Tank Dell is a talented player and a good offense. But going as wide receiver 30, which is not my concern, the big concern is 58th overall. I think that's crazy. I think that is so early. That means you would be taking him in your 5th round, right? And then I'm going to pull up, I did a mock draft. If you want to check that video out, it'll be down below. But in my mock draft, and I'll pop it up right here on the screen so you can actually see it, but he went as pick 4-8. He went as pick 4-8. The running backs that went right after him were Joe Mixon, James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, James Conner. Those guys went in the 5th and 6th rounds. The receivers that went after Tank Dell, let's see. Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Zay Flowers, George Pickens, Christian Kirk, T. Higgins, Jordan Addison, Rome Odunze, Rashee Rice. And then you even get guys like in the 7th round, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Reed, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson. What? I think Tank Dell going as wide receiver 30 isn't the craziest thing and that's on Sleeper, on Fantasy Pros, but on Sleeper, like I said, he went as a 4th round pick to me in an offense that is stacked with receivers, where it's really hard to make 3 options really fantasy relevant in a season, and in a year where CJ Stroud was really good, really proved that he could be a really like a franchise NFL quarterback. To support 3 weapons, you have to be in a pretty special offense, and I just don't know if Houston has it in them with Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and even the running game with Joe Mixon. I have a big pause on Tank Dell. I think he's going way too early as 58 on Fantasy Pros, but like I said on Sleeper, he literally went in the 4th round. I think that's pretty early. Next up on my list, I want to switch to the running back position, and we'll have a little bit of a run on the RB spot. But I want to talk about Devon Achane at, RB8, 20th overall. I think he's a good player, 100%. Like, he showed major flashes last year on film, but we have to be careful. We do this a lot with players where they have these kind of insane efficiency stats seasons. Obviously, Devon Achane is a little different because last year he averaged 7.8 yards per carry and 7.3 yards per catch. So that's, he averaged over 7 yards a touch, which is insane. That's probably I would have to look, but that's probably like on a very historical level per touch on season. But in last year, he only played 11 games due to missed some games due to injury, and he's 5'9", 188 pounds. Probably isn't a full-time back. Now he doesn't have to be, because that's how the NFL is. Not every running back is a running back that plays 80% of the team snaps and gets all the touches. But there's a couple things that worry me a little bit about the Dolphins. I mean, we just had Raheem Mostert rush for 15 touchdowns last year and be the goal line back. We just had the Dolphins. They traded a 2025 third round pick to move up to draft Jalen Wright, the rookie out of Tennessee, in the fourth round. So they kind of, I'm guessing they like the guy if they traded a future third round pick to move up in the fourth round to get another running back. I don't think Achane is like screwed. I don't think that, he's going to be a complete bust as going as, the RB8. My big concern is there's other guys around him that I really like. On Fantasy Pros, they have Travis Etienne, who we'll actually talk about next, and like Derrick Henry. Etienne was the RB3 last year. Henry was the RB8. And if you look at my mock draft that I just did too, I mean, where did Achane go? He went at the end or beginning of the third round. So he was the first pick in the third round. Etienne went after him. Derrick Henry went right after him. Isaiah Pacheco, Rashad White, Joe Mixon, James Cook, Kenneth Walker. And then you obviously have guys kind of like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, all in that mix where you could take the shot on Achane if you want, but I'm just not willing to bet on the super hyper efficient guy that doesn't seem like the team starting running back, where they didn't use him full time last year. He battled injuries with only like 110 carries on the season. It just seems like a lot could go wrong, especially as your RB8, when there's other players who obviously have some question marks, but I feel probably are more proven at this point than Achane. And then next on my list is going to be Travis Etienne, who we just talked about, going as the RB9, 24th player overall. And in that mock draft that I talked about, he was the, second pick in the third round. Etienne finished last year as the RB3 in all formats, right? So he finished as the RB3 in every format. He has no competition in the backfield, anything proven at all. He was top 5 in the NFL last year in attempts, top 6 at running back in receptions, over 300 touches on the season, and played 73% of the snaps, had over 1,000 rushing yards, and finished with 12 touchdowns, caught, I think, 56 balls. In what world is Travis Etienne not going in the middle of the second round as the RB 6, 7, 8? We want to do Breece Hall, right? Everybody loves Breece Hall. People love Saquon Barkley. People love, Devon Achane's going in front of him. We just saw Travis Etienne have a very good season. Admittedly, he faded down the stretch. He had a bad kind of, last, I'd say, quarter of the season that kind of screwed you. So maybe that's where it's coming from. It left a sour taste in fantasy owners' mouths. But man, he is just in this backfield on what we think should be a good offense, gets a majority of, if not basically all the touches, and I think is a really solid player. I just don't understand how he's going in the third round. If the market is so different this year for fantasy football that everyone's valuing receivers so much that RB is falling, I can't imagine in a world of me playing fantasy football for 10 plus years where Travis Etienne would ever fall into the third round. To me, that makes no sense at all. And then the last running back I want to talk about is Tony Pollard. He's going as the RB28, 88th overall. And in the mock draft I did, I'll pull it up real quick. He went as, he went in the 7th round at the 7th pick. So he went after DeAndre Swift and right before Raheem Mostert. And he's in the class with Zamir White, Javonte Williams, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Warren. They all went in the next round after him. I mean, look, Tony Pollard was kind of like Devon Achane, where he had that super hyper efficient season with Dallas. They got rid of Zeke, and he became the full-time back, and he kind of came back to earth. I think on film, he looked a lot better than what he actually put out statistically. But at the end of the year, when you look at it, he was a 1,500-yard player with, 8 touchdowns, not the best yards per carry, but at the end of the year, he was still a decent player, right? So with Tony Pollard, I think he's a good player on film. I think he got pretty unlucky with the touchdowns based on the opportunities he got last year. The Dallas Cowboys basically just changed into a passing offense, which they haven't been really in years. And then last year, they just kind of flipped the script and then became this super hyper-focused passing offense. They let Pollard go in free agency. He signs a decent contract, like I would say a good contract with Tennessee. And I just don't see where you can go, oh, I hate Tony Pollard. Now, I'm not saying he needs to be a top 10 running back because I still think Tajay Spears, who's the backup there, is a really solid and fun player. But Pollard is going to be more the between the tackles, and he should be the starting running back. So I think you're going to get Pollard, who's a starting running back on Tennessee, who just obviously has a Derrick Henry size workload wide open. And now it's not all going to go to him. I'm sure they're going to use Tajay Spears a little bit more in that offense. But man, there's no reason I don't see Tony Pollard going for 250 touches next year and just being way better than the 7th round pick that he's going as. I think this is easy. I think Pollard is a good player in a Tennessee team that's probably not going to be awesome, but not going to be terrible either. I think he's being way undervalued, and I think there's just a lot of offseason narratives after not the greatest statistical season, being let go by Dallas, and then kind of just starting over in Tennessee. I think Pollard at RB, 28 to 88th player overall is insane. I think he should be going way earlier. All right, and let's move on to my very last pick is DK Metcalf as wide receiver 23 on Fantasy Pros, 38th player overall. And if you pull up my handy dandy sleeper mock draft, DK Metcalf went in the 4th round at the 2nd pick. I actually took him there in my mock draft. So he's going in the 4th round. Why? So when you look at kind of the people that are going right around him, you're right. He's going as wide receiver 23, but these are the players who are going right before DK Metcalf. We go Nico Collins, who great year last year, but now like kind of like the Tank Dell story, he's sharing this offense with a lot of weapons. So there could be some volatility there. Then we move on to Deebo Samuel, who's been a good player, but constantly kind of hurt and hasn't really been a great receiver, gets kind of bailed out by rushing attempts and rushing yards. But understand Deebo Samuel. Then we go to Mike Evans. Lost our offensive coordinator, but Mike Evans still a good player. Jalen Waddle, always injured, the second fiddle to Tyreek Hill, went for about 1,000 last year, pretty decent season. Malik Neighbors is a rookie with Daniel Jones. I ain't buying it. You got DJ Moore, who, once again, really good player, but has an offense with a rookie quarterback. Michael Pittman, another thing, like a great season, but not a touchdown maker. So there's just a lot of people around him where I go, really? And then we're even going to go with guys like Drake London's going at pick 204, which is insane to me. Chris Olave. Chris Olave hasn't been very good for fantasy football in his career. Garrett Wilson hasn't been very good in his career for fantasy football. There's a lot of question marks where I go, man, so we're so sure that DK Metcalf is just kind of pedestrian, where we go, yeah, I'm so sure about Chris Olave being an early 2nd round pick, and Stephon Diggs and Nico Collins. I'm sure they're going to repeat after, Stephon Diggs really fell off last year, and Nico Collins is 1-year wonder kind of guy. We're so sure about these guys when we have DK Metcalf, who repeatedly is, these are his career finishes in fantasy football: 32, 7, 12, 18, 16. So not blowing it out of the water by any stretch, but he's had seasons of 7 and 12 where he's been a top wide receiver 1 and then just finished outside of that at 16 and 18. I mean, he averages in his career 75 receptions, almost 1,100 yards and 8.5 touchdowns. That sounds great to me, right? That sounds like a foolproof player. Metcalf has the tendency to be a little up and down at times. He's had a season where he's went for 65 catches and 1,100 yards, and had another season where he went for 90 catches and 1,000 yards. So you don't totally know how his usage is going to go. But I just think DK Metcalf is one of those reliable receivers that still possesses upside. He's one of those guys that you can kind of mold to any team. If you want him to be your receiver 1, if you went RB heavy, or maybe you took a quarterback early, he provides upside. But say you partnered, you drafted Jalen Waddle first, a guy who's probably a little bit more volatile, up and down, inconsistent. DK Metcalf can be some consistency to your team. So that's why I like DK Metcalf so much. I think him going as the wide receiver 23 is kind of disrespecting the guy who's never even finished at wide receiver 23 except for his rookie year. So I think DK Metcalf is a really special player, super talented. And, this year at the end of the season, if we look back and we went, oh yeah, he was the wide receiver 8, I wouldn't be super shocked. And all right, those are my 5 really confusing ADPs that I've seen from this offseason. Obviously, it's early. ADPs are going to rise and sink as the offseason hype gets picked up, and I'm sure free agents and injuries are going to change everything. But stay tuned for more videos. If you like the video, leave a like down below. Let me know if you agree with my picks. Let me know any ADPs that you're really confused about as well, and where you're seeing it and you just don't understand it. Leave it down below. If you like the video, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for more. And I will see you guys next time. See you later.